Welcome back to the Fit Minute Podcast, Fitness for Real People, with your host, Gabrielle Mazar. On today's episode, Gabrielle interviews shamanic practitioner and teacher John Moore. They discuss mind-body alignment, as well as divine masculinity and femininity, and how we have a god and goddess in each of us. And now here's your host, personal trainer and stretch therapist, Gabrielle Mazar.
Welcome back to the Fit Minute Podcast, Fitness for Real People. I'm your host, Gabby Mazar, and on today's episode, I have John Moore. He's a shamanic practitioner. We're going to talk about mind-body connection and alignment, as well as bringing out the gods and goddesses in all of us, and his podcast today. So welcome to the show, John.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Why don't you tell me a little bit about what a shamanic practitioner does? Getting tongue-tied, but what do you do exactly?
So the main thing that I do is I work with people on healing, and I work on the spiritual components of healing. But I work with people on a lot of different things. I also do coaching and teaching as well. I do a whole lot of teaching. But a shamanic practitioner is somebody who practices shamanism, as the name implies, which is kind of a set of the world's oldest spiritual practices. Shamanism has been around since the beginning of humankind, as far as we can tell, from archaeological and anthropological evidence, been around forever and ever. And the main gist of shamanic practice is called the journey. The main thing we do is called the journey, which involves entering into an altered state of consciousness that is really specific to shamanism. So it's unlike meditation or being on magic mushrooms or anything like that. And we know that from very recent EKG research. We didn't know it obviously 10,000 years ago, but we do know it now.
So you can actually see the difference on an EKG, and I'm just getting tongue-tied today, on an EKG with the difference, like a difference in meditation, the difference when you're on magic mushrooms and when you're practicing, your shamanism.
Yeah, so it's close to, but still different from the state of mind that you would enter if you were on psilocybin, which is magic mushrooms. That's the closest analog they have. It is not like meditation or hypnosis or anything like that. So it is a very, very specific brain state that I reach that through drumming or other types of rhythmic activities, and not through the use of what we call plant medicines, even though psilocybin is technically a fungus, not a plant. But some cultures obviously use plant medicines like ayahuasca, psilocybin, peyote, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. So you actually are a third-degree black belt in martial arts. Can you tell me a little bit about that and how that kind of relates to you as a shaman and ties into everything with mind-body alignment and all of that?
Yeah, for sure. I'm 50, and I started training in martial arts when I was about 6. So it's a very long time. And I did back in the 12 years ago or something, eventually got to the point where I got a third degree black belt in a style called Ketsugo Jiu-Jitsu, which is a Japanese style of jiu-jitsu, and it involves a lot of mind-body work. So it's not just brute force. It's about knowing how to align your body properly, how to absorb energy and give energy back. And I'm not talking about anything esoteric here. I'm talking about physical kinetic energy. We don't directly oppose force. We always work around it in circles and absorb it and redirect it and that sort of thing. And it leads itself really well to any sort of spiritual practice, I guess. But for me, particularly shamanism, because shamanism is very, when I practice shamanism, it is very enveloping, for lack of a better term. Absorbing is a better word for that. And it's the same when I train in jiu-jitsu, and I might do the same movement for 3 hours, right? Which a lot of people a lot of people these days don't like training like that, but you enter into an altered state and you start, the movement just starts happening. You don't have to think about it anymore. And it makes you really, really good at, because the muscle memory that you get from that is really incredible. And, you know, using those techniques, using those teaching techniques, I've been able to, you know, borrow those into teaching shamanism, and then borrow from shamanism and teaching martial arts. So it's all related. It's all, you know, a lot of the same stuff underneath.
So how do you bring that into what you do and use it with a client?
How do I bring sort of the jujitsu stuff in with what I do?
Yeah, and the mind-body alignment, how you work with a client to get those two things aligned, just learning what you know and bringing it all together and working with a client on that.
Yeah, so one of the ways that that happens is really bringing focus, right? And jujitsu is really good at focusing energy. And so, and when I talk about mind-body alignment, you know, a good example of that is, let's say I want to get in shape, right? And I have this idea in my head that I want to get in shape. Well, if I sit around on the couch just thinking about getting into shape, I'm not going to get in shape, right? My body has to carry through. My body has to go to the gym, or, you know, do whatever I'm doing, do yoga, run, or whatever I'm doing to get into shape. Mm-hmm. And that is on a really basic form, the way that I describe body-mind alignment. And then when we add spirit in, that means you're really, you know, you're deeply connecting to what you're doing. You're more deeply connecting to what you're doing. So activities like yoga, for example, where people connect on a really deep level, but it can be anything. You know, if you watch somebody who's a really amazing athlete, any kind of athlete, somebody who's, you know, I always talk about Michael Jordan, you know, shooting baskets. And when you watched him flying through the air, that's a really spiritual experience. Right? That's a point in time where his mind, body, and spirit are absolutely in alignment. And the way that he's able to perform, everything's moving in the same direction. When I teach people how to throw a punch in jiu-jitsu, you know, they can throw a punch at something and hit it really hard, but if they turn their nose so their eyes are looking away like 20 degrees, it removes a significant amount of their power, their ability, because their focus is taken away from what they're doing. So that's one way that I really work with clients on mind, body, and spirit alignment.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because that is so true. Just taking that slight turn and taking your focus off will give you less power. It takes the focus off of whatever you're doing. And that's with any sport true. Also, you know, with volleyball, I play volleyball. So if you're not watching the ball, or throwing a baseball, or even when they teach you snowboarding or skiing, where you look is where you go. So if you turn your head, you will start to go in that direction, or you should anyway. If you're not, then I don't know where you're going, but you know, it's taking your focus in a certain direction. So if you're aligning your mind, your body, and your spirit, you will, in essence, take yourself where you want to be. So whatever Absolutely. That goal is, whatever that end point is, or whatever step you're trying to take, if you get those in line, then you'll lead yourself in that direction of where you want to be, because you're focusing on that specific moment or event or goal that you're trying to reach.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, when I work with clients on a coaching basis, you know, it's amazing how people have these goals they want to hit, and you'll ask, okay, what did you do today to reach that? Like, what's the smallest thing you can do today to move towards that goal, whether it's getting in shape or, you know, I had a client who, her goal was to have a professional, not a professional, a showing. She's a photographer, and she'd never have a gallery showing. And I said, well, where's your portfolio? Where's your camera? She's like, oh, they're in storage. I'm like, well, get them out of storage. And within about 3 months, she happened to meet somebody who was opening a gallery, and she's like, oh, I've got some photos, and, you know, wound up getting her first showing. And it happened really fast, only because she was prepared for the opportunity. She was focused on moving ahead, rather than just living up in her head. it's one of the things I like about shamanism as a spiritual practice. We're always talking about, does it grow corn? I can, sit and meditate for the rest of my life. But in shamanism, we really are bringing what we're practicing down into physical reality. And it's not just about spiritual manifesting, that's a part of it, but it is about taking the inspired physical actions that are necessary to do what you need to do.
So you talk about divine masculinity and femininity. Can you explain a little bit about what that is and how to bring out the gods and goddesses in all of us and what that actually means?
Absolutely. So it's really important to understand that this has nothing to do with biological gender or gender identity. Those are, different constructs. The divine masculine is this impulse that I like to describe them as impulses. It's an archetypal impulse, and for us, it's the impulse to evolve as an individual, to get better, to in whatever area that you're focused on. The divine feminine is the impulse to connect on a very deep level. And if you think about that from a gender role perspective, which I think is a weaker perspective, in this culture, men are driven to be CEOs more, to be CEOs and to succeed and stuff. And women have come along really far in that, but traditionally going back even a couple of decades, that wasn't necessarily the case, where women tend to connect more and they tend to be nurturing and that sort of thing. Well, those aren't roles that are destined based on your birth, the sex you were born with or the gender you identify with. Those are impulses we all have. And when we embrace both of those from a mature perspective. So when we talk about toxic masculinity, what we're really talking about is the immature masculine. We're talking about, men who want to have power over, men who want to, treat other people as objects and not as equals and individuals. Where the divine masculine is really about evolving and bringing the benefits of your evolution back to help other people. And it's really about power with. It's about lifting other people up. And that's the divine masculine. The divine feminine is about connecting. And so, the immature is about just being focused on no personal evolution and just being a part of the collective and not standing out and that sort of thing. And when you balance both of those things, when you balance both of those impulses, you can get really, really far in life. But also we mature the culture when we do that. We take strides forward and strides away from toxic and immature psychology into more mature and enlightened, not in a spiritual way, but enlightened in an intellectual way, psychology and moving out of our comfort zone for many of us, as we are not in this culture raised to be like that in many ways.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at it from like the gender roles point of view, you do kind of still put that gender role on men and women, which, for a lot of women is, not, they don't like it.
Sure, of course. Why would you?
Me being a
It's terrible.
a business owner, a homeowner, I don't have kids, I'm not married. So to me, the feminine or the idea of femininity in gender roles is not something I identify with in that regard. But from the divine feminine, having and creating relationships,
right.
Having and nurturing others, that is very, very feminine. It's very it is what women do. We are nurturers, we are lovers, we are family oriented, whether it's our own children or other people, or just family in general. And then you're right, the toxic masculinity is very different than the divine masculine. So women can have that masculine drive to be CEOs, to be business owners, to be entrepreneurs, and not necessarily have those gender roles placed on them. And same thing for men. I think we see it a little less in men than we do in women. I think men don't necessarily connect with that feminine side as much as women can connect with that masculine side. So I think that there's definitely kind of a disconnect with that, because we don't necessarily nurture that or allow that from a societal standpoint. So
Right, absolutely. And I came from the boys don't cry generation, right? My parents were boomers, and that was an era in that was very toxic to my Gen X. When growing up, I see really big differences in my children who are in high school and the people around them, how that has changed significantly, and I think that's fantastic. But yeah, it's culturally enforced, and culture, like, that it's not a universal, because culture changes. So, and gender roles change significantly from culture to culture and from era to era. None of this is set in none of this is set in stone. And the divine masculine and feminine isn't about cramming anybody into a role. It's not about you need to do this because you were born with these chromosomes, or you need to do this because you were born and your skin's darker than mine, or you need to do this because you speak this language and not this language. There's nothing divine about that. There's nothing that says, stay in your lane, and some other human is defining what your lane is. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And so we have, all of us, and you're a good example of this, all of us have both of those impulses. And I think you're absolutely right. In this culture, particularly, it's not easy, but it's probably easier for women to embrace the other role than it is for men, because we have not supported that at all. And one thing that I try to teach people, because we call this the patriarchy, right? We've been living in a patriarchal system for 6,000 or 7,000 years. It's not good for anybody. It's not good for men or women. Women have definitely gotten the short end of the stick, but men haven't caught up to realizing, wow, being crammed into a role that might not fit me, or having to act like a jerk so that I'm accepted by my friends or family. Those aren't things that make for healthy individuals and happy individuals. That doesn't lead to living a fulfilling life. And I definitely have always been embraced both sides. Luckily, for some reason, broke out of that toxic environment I grew up in. And definitely when I had children, I was I loved the nurturing aspect and embracing that, which is the divine feminine aspect. And now, very frequently, if I'm sitting in a group of people who are practicing shamanism, very often I'm the only man in the room, because shamanism is very matriarchal. There's no hierarchy, which is patriarchal, and there's no pope, or there's no Bible, there's no dogma, there's none of that. And so I think where men get uncomfortable is like, oh, I can't rank in this. I can't be above people. This is about collective. This is about cooperation and working together. And that's not a model that I'm used to.
Because you're taking the ego out of it. There's no ego in shamanism. It's all working together as a collective group.
Yeah. And one of the goals of shamanic practice and shamanic learning, we call becoming the hollow bone, which is basically meaning like you're becoming like a hollow reed or hollow straw, where your ego stands out of the way so that the work is done through you. And that's hard, because as a male in this culture, I was taught we got to be in charge. We got to hold on to this. We got to control this. And shamanism is all about surrender. and that was hard for me. That was really hard for me in the beginning. But then I realized, oh, surrender is actually cool. Like when I surrender to this process, It doesn't mean I'm giving up my sovereignty when I surrender. It just means I'm giving, I'm letting my ego step aside and letting go of the things that I don't have control over. And that's a much healthier place for me to be, especially.
So what exactly brought you into this? What made you decide you wanted to be a shamanic practitioner?
So I grew up in a very toxic household. I had a significant amount of childhood trauma. There was alcoholism and domestic violence and child abuse and all kinds of, like, just the worst kind of stuff you could imagine growing up. And I repressed that for a really, really long time, and until I was an adult. It was probably one of the things that led me into martial arts training, actually, was wanting to be safe in my body. And, I had a real breakdown, physical and mental breakdown, in my early 40s. And I was trying to heal myself, and I was doing meditation and seeing doctors and going to therapy and all this stuff, and nothing was really working for me. And but I've always been a meditator, and I was meditating, and one day I just heard what sounded like a voice coming from outside of my head that said, "You need to learn shamanism." And which was odd because I didn't know anything about shamanism. And I went into it. I found a teacher who accepted me as an apprentice, even though I hadn't done any, I knew nothing about shamanism. I knew the word, but I didn't know what it meant. And I had no intention of ever working with another human being. I went into it only to work on myself. But what happens is, as you heal yourself, you change, and you realize that you're healing the world as you heal yourself. And I really wound up enjoying working with other people. I love working with other people, either one-on-one or in groups. I love teaching, and it really felt like home for me. And, I spent 25 years in technology, and so it's kind of a weird place for me to wind up. But, I guess there are weirder places I could have wound up.
I'm sure.
But yeah, it just really became home to me, and it's something that I absolutely love and think about 24/7 these days.
So you have a podcast. It is called Speaking Spirit.
It is, yeah.
Nice. Yay. Good. I got it. So tell me about your podcast. What do you talk about in the podcast? What episodes have you done so far?
Yeah, I mean, I talk about all kinds of spiritual topics. Obviously I'm focused on shamanism, but I've had guests talking about other things. Recently, I had a friend of mine on who's an animal whisperer. So she does like animal communication stuff, which I think is fascinating and not a skill that I have. And I've had other shamanic people on, and people from other traditions. And I pick topics that I think are just really interesting to me anyway. And hopefully, and other people seem to be interested in them. I have listeners all over the world. And so it'll go in all types of different directions. And so it does have a spiritual focus, but very often I'm talking about mind, body, spirit topics and mind body alignment. And I've done episodes on divine masculine, divine feminine. So exactly the things that we're talking about today. So I'm about almost 50 episodes in, a little over a year. I do them approximately every 2 weeks now. I was doing them every week, but that became too much for me to do and schedule. So now I'm on about a every 2 week schedule, and I'm about 50 episodes in over a year in at this point.
Do you have any episodes that you think are really like standing out, that really stand out in your mind, that are super interesting? All of them are interesting, obviously, but for you particularly, that you think that people don't know about, that are like, wow, this one was like eye-opening to me?
Yeah, I mean, the animal communication episode, which is one of the most recent ones, was really eye-opening because I didn't know a lot about it. And I led into it with, when I was a kid, Dr. Dolittle from the 1960s was one of my favorite movies that I watched. And now I'm talking to somebody who does that, who talks to animals. And I thought she was going to talk about, well, I work with animals who are having behavior problems. And that is part of what she does. But honestly, a lot of what she does is she works with the people who own the animals. And she's like, this animal has a message for you. And that was really cool to me, because I do love animals. I just don't have the skill of animal communication, or I haven't developed that quite yet. But I absolutely love animals. So I did find that was pretty fascinating. The Divine Masculine, Divine Feminine episode is one of my first ones, and that's gotten it seems to be one that people are very, very interested in. It has a large amount of listeners, that people are still downloading that episode. So that seems to be a topic that people are very interested in, and a topic I love talking about as well.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think that would be so intriguing to people?
I think we're coming of age. I think there's an impulse. Again, I'm talking about impulses, but there's an impulse to awaken that happens as a result of crisis. And we're going through global crisis right now. We're going through a pandemic. We're going through, warfare, and all of these things going on, and incredible divisiveness in the world, and all of the changes with social media and everything that are making people feel really disconnected. And when people get in touch with these parts of themselves that, hey, you know what, you have both a god and goddess living inside you, people tend to feel more connected. And there's this impulse that people feel drawn to that. People feel drawn to awaken, either in shamanically, or with whatever other form of spirituality they're deciding to practice. And so that I really do think that that's why people are drawn to that particular topic.
So what kind of people do you work with, particularly who would search out a shaman, and why?
Wow, it is really broad. It's a really broad range of people. I have had clients. I have clients who are therapists, and I have clients who are dentists, and clients who are plumbers, and so all walks of life, men and women. The number one reason people came to me early on in my career, the first 2 years I was in practice, 100% of my clients came to me for trauma. And that is, shamanism is really good with trauma. They've been dealing with trauma for thousands of years. And there are particular techniques that we use that are fairly in alignment with modern psychology. I think we talk about trauma in the same ways, but using different terminology, but we're taking different paths to the same mountaintop. And having had experience with trauma in my life, and having worked through a lot of that, I think there's what I call wound resonance, where people who have the same or similar wounds can sense that, and they seek out people who have been through a lot of the same things. And one of the nice things about it is I was diagnosed with PTSD in my early 40s, and I live symptom free, and have for many years. And it's when I was diagnosed, they're like, there's no cure for this. And I'm like, well, thank you for that. Thank you for that. Thank you for telling me that. That's not very helpful.
Yeah, right.
So I can't say that I'm cured, because technically that would be not right. But I think living without symptoms for a long time, and I had, at that time in my life when I was diagnosed, I had lost 60 pounds, which I couldn't afford to lose. I had couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, very physically ill, on top of the severe depression and panic attacks and all of this stuff. And without medication, I live symptom free. And so I'm not smarter than anybody else, and I'm not more evolved or enlightened or any of those things than anybody else. So the nice thing about, I think, my story is that I hope that it lends hope to other people, that they can manage their symptoms or live symptom free, because I don't have anything. I don't have a leg up on anybody. I'm just an average guy. I found a path that worked for me. And I think other people can too. And so I like to say I'm not special. Like in martial arts, when people ask me about martial arts, I'll tell them I'm not a tough guy, but I can teach you how to beat me up more efficiently. That's my skill there. But with shamanism, trauma has been the number one thing, but people come to me for all kinds of things. The number one complaint I get these days, I'll ask people, why did you seek me out? And they'll say, I just feel really disconnected. I feel disconnected from myself. I feel disconnected from the world. I feel disconnected from spirit. And that to me is a direct result of what's going on in the world with the pandemic, with the divisiveness, with all of those things. It's highlighting this disconnect that people have from nature and from spirit and from themselves. It just exacerbates it.
Well, I like to say that everybody's special, so I think you're special.
Thank you. Yeah, we're all special in our own way. I just mean, like, I don't have a leg. I don't have advantages that other people don't. That other people don't in dealing with this particular part of
Sure.
aspect of my life. But yeah, we are all special for sure.
And everybody does have some sort of trauma, whether how large or small that trauma is. Every single person has some sort of trauma, or some sort of thing that has happened to them in their life that has led them to wherever they are. And seeking help is always my number one, because I just don't think people do it. But
Sure.
also, I think that people don't necessarily know, or are not diagnosed, or are misdiagnosed, that do have PTSD and don't know it. Everything that you've been through in your specific situation, I know a lot of people have been there and have never dealt with it, or just don't know how to even go there. I've heard people say to me, I can't even go there. I can't even go there. And
Yeah.
it's that repression that causes a lot of things, including, PTSD, including stress, including even disease, because you are keeping in all of those emotions, and how you deal with that is how you heal and grow and become kind of a better version of yourself, or the best version of yourself. I don't want to say better, but maybe the best version of yourself, knowing how to address and handle and navigate all situations better.
Yeah, for sure. And, when you heal yourself, you heal the world, right? Because you heal how you show up in the world. And the thing, and I completely get you, because I didn't deal with my trauma for 40 years, right? And because it's hard and it is not easy work. And, but what happened was I had kids, and, I had to take care of myself so I could be the dad that they deserved, right? And you don't have to have kids to decide that you're worth it to take care of the trauma, because I don't care who you are. You're worth it. You're worth the effort. Trust me. But it is hard, and we do repress it. And you don't have to be re-traumatized to heal from trauma. That's one thing I learned the hard way, because I thought I had to remember every detail of everything that ever happened to me and go through it and do, have abreactions and all of those things. And that's not necessarily the case. So it might not be as hard as people think it is. And there are lots of different ways to address trauma. We are learning so much about it. There's advances in psychedelic medication. There's body-centered trauma. There's trauma-informed yoga therapy. I mean, there's all kinds of, I happen to love shamanism, and it worked for me. But there are many, many different approaches to it that are, and I think everybody deserves to find the approach that works for them, and to the amount of freedom that I can't even describe the amount of freedom I feel from looking at the way I was living my life before and the way that I'm living my life now. It is worth it.
Yeah. So people can find your podcast, Speaking Spirit, on your website, mainshaman.com.
That is
And
correct.
Maine,
Yes, I have.
the state of Maine, M-A-I-N-E.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. M-A-I-N-E.
Not like a lion's mane or I don't yeah, got it.
Right.
But
Right.
yeah, so mainshaman.com, you can find its podcast there or probably on other avenues, I'm sure, through Apple Podcasts and all of the Google and all of the above. Is there anything else you want to leave our listeners with today?
Just, again, I just want to reiterate, like mind body spirit alignment is really the way to accomplish anything. And it doesn't matter what your goal is. It doesn't have to be, physical fitness. I realize this, you talk a lot about physical fitness and health and that sort of thing. Absolutely, that applies to health, but it also applies to almost anywhere in your life. And the deeper you go into anything, the more aligned you get, and the deeper you go into anything, I don't care what activity it is, if it's painting or cooking or exercising or whatever, the deeper you go into anything, the more spiritual it becomes. And just by spiritual, I just mean gives you a sense of feeling connected to something greater than yourself. It doesn't have to be a religion thing if that's not your bag. It doesn't have to be any sort of belief system involved with that. It's just this feeling, this sense, the knowing that you are in fact connected to something greater than yourself. So dive in deep. It's worth it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, John, for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it. I will have a link to your podcast and to your website in the show notes. And thank you so much for coming on today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me on.
Of course. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening today. And we will see you all next week.
Thank you so much for listening to the Fit Minute Podcast, Fitness for Real People, with your host, Gabrielle Mazar. If you would like more information on today's episode, you can find it in the show notes and on Gabrielle's website at www.destinationfitcations.com. Visit to keep an eye out for upcoming fitcations. Be sure to share the show, give this podcast a review, and subscribe so you won't miss an episode. Join us next week to hear more stories from people just like you. This has been the Fit Minute Podcast, Fitness for Real People with Gabrielle Mazar.